I want to enlarge here on an idea that I started already of a polite way of debating proponents of non-factual ideologies and religions. Those ideologies are not entirely non-factual, though, because then they would sound to us as the ravings of a lunatic. No, they have a lot of facts in them, but their proponents manage to sneak in non-factual reality. And it will become clear what I'm talking about later. A polite way to debate somebody, because in a debate it is most effective when you, after your opponent has stated his assertions, to understand his position clearly and to, in a short way, succinctly state what he is saying, his idea, and then you can proceed with criticizing them. So, I gave as an example, and I will use again this in this video, the example of the paradox of the lost dollar. Imagine that there is a debate with the title Simple Everyday Mathematics is broken, it is illogical. And the proponent of this assertion starts by describing a real situation. Three friends reach a hotel. The young clerk tells them that there is one room with 3 beds. The price for the room is $30. The 3 friends decide to pay $10 each. Then the clerk realizes that he has made a mistake, and this week the price for this room is $25. So let's assume that the till was empty, has been emptied before the clerk took $30 from the friends and put them in the till. So the clerk opens the till again and takes out $5 and gives $1 to each of the 3 friends and keeps the remaining $2 for himself. This is the story that the proponent of this statement, assertion that the mathematics is illogical, tells you. And then he says, okay, so the situation is this: the 3 men have contributed $9 each to the price of the room. 9 times 3 is 27, but when we add the $2 that the clerk kept for himself, we get $29. 27 plus 2 is 29. Where is the missing dollar from the original $30? So what you can say to this debater, understanding clearly, having heard all of what he has said until now, understanding it, and you can say to him, so you are saying, if we are to account for the $30 in the till, we have to do these mathematical actions. Multiply the $9 that each of the friends has paid, and then add the $2 that the clerk has kept for himself. When we state all this like that, it will be clear immediately to everybody, to the audience, and to the debater himself, that what he should have started with is illogical. We do not have to account for $30 in the till because there are no $30 in the till. There are 25 there. And anyway, we cannot account for the original $30 that the man paid by adding 27 to the $2 that the clerk kept for himself. And there are many other situations which can be dealt with in the same way. You understand, listen to the proponent of a certain idea to the end, understand it clearly, and then state it succinctly for him and for the audience, Let's take, for example, one argument for the existence of God. One of the arguments is the Kalam Cosmological argument. It is stated like this. Everything that begins to exist has a cause. The universe has begun to exist. Therefore, the universe has a cause. And then they take this cause and ruminate on that, and they say that it must be a God who is the cause for the universe. You listen to all this, and what you can say to this debater is the following. So, you are saying the following. If there are things that began to exist, and there are things that did not begin to exist, and by this, you might mean things that did not begin to exist, so things that do not exist. They did not begin to exist even. What things are you talking about then, if they do not exist? Or you mean that things that did not begin to exist, but they still exist. They have always existed. There wasn't a moment in time when they began to exist. They always existed. That's what you're saying. That's what you are starting with, or what you should have started with, because you finished with one of them. You start with if there are things that begin to exist, and if there are things also that did not begin to exist. And then you continue with the logical discussion. But we have to agree on certain statements. For example, you begin with, yes, there are things that begin to exist. We know of things that begin to exist. But then you state, and if there are things that do not begin to exist, they have always existed. You started with that hidden assertion. We don't know of any things that never began to exist. We don't know of any such things. So, it is illogical. And if you had stated at the beginning, as you should have, that there are things that did not begin to exist, we can imagine that there is a sort of universe. There are things in the universe that always existed, in the sense that they did not exist in the form and shape and everything that they are now, but they changed constantly with time. So, yes, our universe, science has proved, in physics they have proved that the universe, there was a beginning, there was a starting point of the universe as we know it now. Actually, even that is wrong, because at the starting point there was no universe as we know it now. No. That they talk about the singularity. All space and matter that we see now was pressed in a very tiny dot. So that is not the universe as we know it now. There was something, yes, that started with inflation, and then the various particles and so on appeared, and it developed in various ways until we get the universe as we see it now. The galaxies, the stars, the planets, all the things that we see on the planet Earth, and humans, and with their intelligence and consciousness. So, what you started with does not lead to the conclusion that you reached, because there was misleading, because you misleaded people to reach that conclusion, which is wrong. By not saying, as you should have said at the beginning, there are things that begin to exist, and there are things, we all agree that there are things that do not begin to exist, they have always existed. And if that is to be accepted, that there are such things, yes, we can agree on at the beginning, before we have even mentioned God, that yes, probably there are things that have always existed. It is something that prior to the Big Bang, the beginning of the universe, existed, and then developed, and some say evolved into the universe that we know now. There was a misleading line of thought there, and in this argument there is a misleading line of thought as well, because if we only start with things that begin to exist, why do we assert then that yes, there is also a thing that did not begin to exist? There can be things that never began to exist but always existed. If we had started with that, as we should have, then the logical thought is that, well, there is something that we know not what, from which the universe developed until its present state. Bye.